fate is before you. Choose wisely. The purpose of this conversation is more or less give a correlation, or more or less compare and contrast. Is there blind justice for black men and black boys in America, or American men in general? And because of this expose, I want you to take a look at it from a collaborative analysis. And I want you to ask yourself the question, was Bill Cosby given due process? And does art imitate life as it relates to the historical context of black men and boys? You know, and I know that years ago, maybe almost 80 years ago or less, Emmett Till was brutally killed and no one came to his defense. And even I myself have experienced the trauma of not having due process due to being a black man or a man of color. And I have these conversations because in the context of the Manhood Chronicles, many times black men and black boys are not heard. Many times we are often deemed to be guilty instead of being innocent until having a trial or jury. And because of that, it's caused unrepairable trauma and mental health anguish as it relates to the efficacy of the black men and black boys. I want you to ask yourself the question, is there blind justice in America as it relates to black men, black boys, or American men in general? And if justice is blind, was Emmett Till given the proper due process? And was Bill Cosby given the proper due process as well? Let this marinate in your mind as I'm about to drop this fire for your mind. And ask yourself the question once again, is justice blind as it relates to the release of Bill Cosby and also within the historical context of black men in America? And remember this, if it ain't 7, it ain't kosher. If it ain't kosher, it ain't right. I'm gonna drop fire for your mind, and I want you to ask yourself the question based on the input from this short clip. Be well.
This U.S. citizen who served our country in the Navy, not just in the Navy, but he served our country in so many different ways through his celebrity, him and Mrs. Cosby. Mr. Cosby has always used his celebrity, his name, his likeness to uplift women. This is a man who refused to perform at the White House with Nixon. Nixon put him on a communist list in the 60s, along with so many other great names like Dick Gregory, Jane Fonda. How could a man who was being watched by the FBI every day be raping and drugging women in the 60s or 70s, especially a black man? Today, innocence came to Mr. Cosby with the help of these wonderful attorneys.
Yes, yes.
To his right, you will see Ms. Jennifer Blungeen. She argued the appeal. To my left, you see Brian Perry.
Yes.
To Brian's left, Ashley Cohen. And then you have
Haley Coolbaum.
Haley Coolbaum. These are women and men.
They kicked ass.
Who all walks of life. As I said earlier, James Brown made a song, it's a man's world, but it would be nothing without a woman or girl. Mrs. Cosby was that woman. For 57 years, the queen, the matriarch of the Cosby family, who fought for his vindication, who said he would be vindicated. And today, on this hot day, this is a hot verdict for us that we will forever cherish. Because we got one of the greatest, or the greatest entertainer alive today. Mr. Bill Cosby, this great American citizen, this American treasure, this icon with us today. I'm going to allow Ms. Blungeen to say a few words. Ms. Blungeen?
Yes, obviously we are thrilled to have Mr. Cosby home. He served 3 years of his unjust sentence.
Too long.
He did it with dignity and principle, and he was a mentor to other inmates. He was really, as I say, doing the time. The time was not doing him.
He's a classy man.
And I want to say this about the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. They demonstrated that they were impervious to the court of public opinion, which, frankly, the lower courts were not. Mr. Cosby, we knew all along he never should have been prosecuted for this. He had every right to rely on the prosecutor's word. And they pulled the rug out from underneath him because of politics, because of the court of public opinion, and that is not how our system should operate.
Absolutely.
When that happens, There cannot be a just sentence. And if there had been a just verdict and a just sentence, we wouldn't be here fighting. But there was not a just sentence and not a just verdict. And I think it's really important that we keep our eye on the ball, that our Constitution is sacred, and that we need to uphold it at all times. And I'm glad that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court saw it the way we did.
Brian Perry.
I'm very proud of the team that we put together, very proud to be part of this case. We always thought that eventually this is where it would end up. Mr. Cosby and I had many, many talks over the last couple of years. I predicted it, and we're here. It's a good day for the Cosby family.
Mr. Cosby, how does it feel to be home?
Well, he is extremely happy to be home. He looks forward to reuniting with his wife and his children. And obviously, this has been a hard 3 years for this entire family. And it's really a blessing for him. And he says, you know, his heart is just beating really fast, and he's happy to be here.
And we have Ashley here who worked on the case. Ashley, say a few words. Ashley Cohen.
I'm just honored to be part of such an amazing team. These lawyers did an incredible job, and I'm so thankful to be a part of it and to help Mr. Cosby, and I'm just proud to be here and watch him get released.
And this wonderful attorney, Haley, you see right here. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Her father
Yes.
was in prison with Mr. Cosby, and he sent a message to Mr. Cosby before he left today for her. Say a few words.
He did. He said that he loves me very, very much, and I.
What's your father's name?
Richard. And I, in return, love him very, very much in return, and I was glad that Mr. Cosby and him got to know each other while incarcerated together, and I'm blessed and so grateful to be here to see Mr. Cosby be released.
And in closing, this was an unwanted 3-year vacation that Mr. Cosby never asked for. But in hindsight, we're happy that he got it because he was able to pull the covers off of the corruption in Montgomery County with the crooked DA, with the crooked judge, Steele and O'Neill. These same people find this man, this American citizen. I don't know how a DA has that much time on his hand to fine him $2,010 for not cutting his yard. I was on the way to pay that fine when I got a call from Nick DeHatt, and Nick told me that they had vacated the conviction. You know, what we saw today was justice. Justice for all Americans. Mr. Cosby conviction being overturned is for the world and all Americans who are being treated unfairly by the judicial system and some bad officers, because all officers are not bad. So we want to thank this entire team. We want to thank Mrs. Cosby, her family. I want to thank my family. And just thank you all for those who decided to tell the truth and allowed us to tell the truth when we had the opportunity. Thank you.
Mr. Cosby, how you feeling? Are you happy to be
Great.
out?
Shit. How are you feeling? Feeling great. Nick, you better do right here.
I believe that the whole United States is mourning with me. And if the death of my son can mean something to the other unfortunate people all over the world, then for him to have died a hero would mean more to me than for him just to have died.
Emmett Till, 14, was kidnapped and killed allegedly for wolf whistling at the wife of accused Roy Bryant.
It's not just that they discover his body and that he's been killed. He has been brutally beaten. As a criminal defense attorney, when we look at crimes, we often try to put together a picture about what happened, and it takes a lot of hatred and a lot of rage to do the kind of violence that was done to Emmett Till. Being a black boy in the American South could be quite perilous. The allegation that Emmett Till was being social with a white woman was considered an affront, a threat to the racial order. And I think the shock of his death was compounded by the brutality of his death. Emmett's mother couldn't actually conform to the conventions of the time, and she did something really quite remarkable. She made the really unorthodox choice of having a funeral with an open casket that was going to be very widely publicized, that was going to be attended by the national press. She wanted civil rights leaders and political leaders to see what they did to her child. She invited David Jackson and Jet magazine to take pictures of this child's battered body. And these images were widely circulated. Jet magazine was a publication that was primarily produced and distributed to the African American community that had been trying to educate the rest of the country about the horrors of segregation and racial violence and lynching in the American South. And the images were really, really challenging. It was the kind of visual that you didn't typically see. You certainly didn't see it outside of a war zone, and you certainly didn't see it with children. His face was grotesque. You could see eyes, but you couldn't really distinguish all of his facial features. That's how much violence he had been subjected to. Emmett's mother's presence in the photo is really important because she's really giving witness to victimization and violence. The other images that Emmett's mother provided just created this notion of a very respectable young boy who was trying to make the very best impression on everyone he met. The juxtaposition of a little boy in a suit and a tie with his battered face was a stark image that made it really impossible for anyone who saw it to be silent about it. Mainstream publications like Look and Life began talking about this issue. It became an issue that elected officials were being questioned about. These images made it impossible for white families in other parts of the country to stay indifferent, to stay neutral.
Never has this quiet little cotton-growing community of Mississippi seen so much publicity and so much excitement as in the past few days. Nearly 200 of the town's 500 or 600 residents have packed into the courthouse to hear the day's proceedings.
Do you have any evidence bearing on this case?
I do know that this is my son.
How long do you expect to be here?
Until the trial is over.
Bryant and his half-brother, J.W. Milam, were acquitted by this jury. And subsequently, even though they admitted taking the boy from the house, they were freed of kidnap charges.
The inability to hold anyone accountable for his murder and the comfort with which the men who killed him were able to talk about the violence was just adding to the injury. They weren't just killing a boy. They're expressing something rooted in this decades of animosity and fear and anger.
A boy, a 14-year-old boy, was killed brutally. And one of our objectives here is to see to it that that boy whose picture you see there does not die an inconspicuous death, and that his case will be remembered and something will be done about it.
These images became powerful forces in organizing a new level of commitment and resistance. The brutal murder of Emmett Till really pushed Rosa Parks to a deeper level of activism. That was one of the motivating forces behind her choice to not give up her seat on that bus. And in many ways, it was an organizing and galvanizing moment for the civil rights movement in this country. These shootings of unarmed black boys and men have been going on for decades. It is a manifestation of this same presumption of dangerousness that killed Emmett Till, that killed thousands of people of color during the lynching era. Imagery and photography is a really important tool. Without the imagery, there would be no one who's prepared to believe some of the violence that we've witnessed.
It's such a gratifying feeling to see you all sitting by and standing by, because I realized shortly after this thing happened that it wasn't a fight that I could do, that it was going to be a fight that we had to do, that the people would do for me, more or less. And
we've never made progress in this country around important social justice issues until we've given marginal victims a face. That image still has resonance, it still has power, and I think it still expresses the pain and anguish of a huge part of our population that is still hoping for basic recognition of their humanity.
And I want you all to stand by me, because it's going to be a fight. And if you will stand by me, I will stand by you, because I am not afraid.